All right, AP2 night class. What is the AP2? So here we go, digestive system. Hopefully you read the chapter, right? So uh, big thing about your digestive system, you take in food, you grind it up mechanically, you start breaking it down chemically. That happens starting in the mouth with starches, travels down through the esophagus, nothing happens to it in the esophagus, gets down to the stomach where there's still more mechanical mixing and churning and chemical breakdown. Usually the proteins, that's where they're going to start right there. Then it gets turned into, from a bolus, what they call a bolus, down into the chyme. And then the chyme moves into the first part of the small intestine, that's the duodenum. Further broken down, pancreatic materials added to it, further breaking it down. A lot of the absorption occurs within that small intestine. There's 3 parts of the small intestine. And then it travels through and gets into the large intestine where usually most of the undigestible material is found. Bacteria are there and they're working on it, and you're getting some more absorption there. Moisture, liquid being absorbed there too. And then the waste, the things that the body can't absorb, that doesn't want to absorb, that needs to get rid of, passed out. So there are accessory structures associated with digestion. You can see them there, the teeth, the tongue, salivary glands, right? Then you have the liver, the gallbladder, the pancreas, and such. The activities of it, of course, eating. I just had my breakfast, right? Secretion, a lot of liquids. You secrete a lot of liquids, so you need to stay hydrated. You reabsorb a lot of these and such, but some you don't, But so you need to always remember, stay hydrated. Movement of food, the propulsion of it, that is the peristalsis, Then, like I mentioned, you have the mechanical and digestive breakdown. The mechanical is the chewing and the mixing. The chemical is when the body uses proteins, enzymes, enzymes and such to do this. And the enzymes have to be turned on, turned off, and so. Then it absorbs all of the good stuff, and it gets rid of all of the bad stuff. So there's your 6 basic activities. Now, when you're looking at the GI tract, there's different layers here. You need to keep this in mind when you're thinking about this. You have the mucosa, which is the epithelial layer. It's the part that it's the part that the material is going to touch. You have a tube passing through your body, starting at the mouth, ending at the anus. And when you're in the middle of the tube, you are outside of the body. Remember that. So the first layer there is the mucosa, mucous membrane. It is non-keratinized. In the areas where you have abrasion, where the food or the feces rubs and such, the mouth, the pharynx, the esophagus, and then the anal passage, it's non-keratinized stratified squamous. When you get to the absorption and secretion, it's simple columnar. All right. Then right beneath the epithelium, you have this layer, this connective tissue. Remember, connective tissue connects epithelium to muscle, and it's known as the lamina propria. This is your mucosa-associated lymphoid tissue. This is your MALT. This is your second line of defense and all. So since the epithelium is not keratinized, you need this. This is the immune system, the lymphatic system, and also. Then you have muscular layers, and from when you're in the pharynx, that is stratified muscle. You control that. It's under a voluntary control. You get into the esophagus, and then the esophagus is smooth muscle, and it is involuntary. Once it's in there, you can't control it with your and such. Now, it is 2 layers of smooth muscle, longitudinal and circular. Circular on the inside, longitudinal on the outside. When it's in the esophagus, when it's in the stomach, it comes down to 3 layers. You have a longitudinal, you have a circular, and oblique. You have an oblique layer. So you have 3 layers of smooth muscle there. Then back to the small intestine, it's 2 layers of smooth muscle. On the large intestine, same thing, but then there's another band, and that's the taenia coli, and that helps to contract and keep the large intestine kind of in a pucker to form these little pouches that you'll notice and all. So underneath that MALT is this areolar connective tissue. Remember what that looks like from AMP1? and that's the submucosa, and that's where the nerve endings, the plexus and such, are found. These are enteric nerves and such that are help to control the motion and movement, and your body does that with the sympathetic parasympathetic nervous system. So you'll also have glands in there, and then there's lymph in there as well. So there's our picture of the tube. The middle part, which is outside of the body cavity, that's the lumen. And then you come into the mucosa right there. Then you have the lamina propria right there. Then you have a submuscularis, small little layer muscle, and that helps to pucker the lumen to create the villi. And the villi are the finger-like extensions that aid in absorption. Then you have the submucosa, which is that areolar connective tissue, loose connective tissue, that has the blood vessels, the lymph, and the nerves in it. And then you get to the muscular layer. The innermost is circular, the outermost is longitudinal, and then you have the membrane, the peritoneal membrane, which is going to be the visceral peritoneum. So, hey, I mentioned all of that to you. So, like I said, the back of your pharynx and the upper esophagus is skeletal muscle. You control that. Okay. The sphincter canal, you have two of them. You have an internal and an external. The external sphincter is skeletal muscle. You control that. You don't control the internal. Then the rest of it is smooth muscle, and it is controlled via the what am I going to say? Via the parasympathetic sympathetic system and such. I had to stop and think about that when I lose that in my head. So we mentioned those. We went those. Oh, the outermost, we mentioned that the membrane. The esophagus is not in a body cavity, so it's only covered with this adventitious tissue. It's an areolar connective only, so it doesn't have a membrane around it because it's found in that mediastinum and all. So the diaphragm, of course, that separates the thoracic from the abdominal cavity and all that, and it separates the membranes and all. So you've seen that. I mentioned those to you. The visceral, the parietal. There's a little cavity there, the peritoneal cavity. Has a little fluid in it. That helps with lubrication. If that gets filled, if it fills up, and that's usually because you have proteins in there, and osmosis pulls that water in there, and then that's, help me, ascites and such. So any inflammation, any bacterial infection, any viral infection with that, and you have peritonitis. And also, we could philosophically argue about this term retroperitoneal, but the kidneys, we'll just stick with the kidneys. They are behind. They're behind that peritoneum, so that's why they refer to them as retroperitoneal. Are they in the abdominal cavity? Technically, no. The peritoneum, then, it on the parietal that's around the walls and such, it then comes together to form these folds that wrap up your organs and hold your organs in place and such. And collectively, that's known as your mesentery and all. The blood vessels, the abdominal, the lymphatic vessels and such, they pass through that mesentery. The pancreas is found tucked into that mesentery and all. So where it holds things in place, you can see those. The mesocolon, the falciform ligament is for the liver. The lesser omentum and the greater omentum. The lesser omentum is holding the upper part of the stomach. That's a lesser curvature. The greater omentum, this is your curtain, your fat curtain, and such large quantities of adipose tissue. There's lymph there. There's lymph nodes and lymph nodules. Remember the difference between a node and a nodule. But that originates off the greater curvature of your stomach and drapes over your colon and also that's your fat curtain. All right, now the organs, of course, the mouth, that is known as your oral cavity. I'm older, I call it the buccal cavity. You're going to call it the oral cavity. Of course, you have the cheeks, and the cheeks have the buccinator muscles in them, hence the buccal cavity. That's the outer part there. The red part that has no hair on it, and also that's the vermilion, and it's the red portion right there, and it comes up and it connects in the middle, and that's, you have your labial frenulum, and then that is kind of inside, and that connects the top lip to your teeth and gums right there. So, and where that's found, you stick your tongue up in it, that's known as the vestibule. All right. The roof of your mouth is your hard palate. Run your finger back there, you'll find the soft palate. Keep running it back there, you'll hit that uvula, and then you'll vomit. And then you'll have a mess over your computer, so don't do that. There you can see the teeth. In the lab, we want you to know the types of teeth and such. You can look and see them right here, and this is a good photograph, I thought. So there's your incisors, and then your bicuspid. Bi means two. Cusp is a point. Then you get to your canines, and then you get into your premolars. These are your tricuspids and such right through there. So then into your molars, and then into that last set of molars that erupts when you become an adult. I don't know about that. Roughly 18 to 20 and all. So those are your wisdom teeth. There you can see the salivary ducts. You have them that are, I'll show you in a minute, I think, right beneath the ear. That's the parotid. Then you have the submandibular, the one that's underneath the mandible. And then you have the sublingual, the one underneath the tongue. The ducts and the openings, you don't have to know. You're not responsible for that. If you look, there's the uvula. And you look back in there, there's those tonsils, right? So the glands and such, the salivary glands, they secrete saliva, and that's just liquid that helps to lubricate and helps for things to dissolve. The parotid, it's on both sides of your jaws, right underneath your ear. It travels through that Stenson's duct, runs in there and dumps in at your masseter muscle right there around your second molar. That can get inflamed, and you'll feel that one sometimes. Underneath the jawbone, the submandibular, it empties into the floor of the mouth and such, and then the one that's underneath the tongue, and that's it's on top of the submandibulars and all. It also empties into the floor. What is saliva? Water with a few little ions. Some lysozymes. That's a type of enzyme that breaks down and kills bacteria and other such. Here's an important one. Salivary amylase. Amylose is the old name for starch. So this is the enzyme that breaks down starch. And then you have a lingual lipase. This comes off your tongue, and it goes after lipids. It's after fats and such. So the starch is a complex polysaccharide. Just a big collection of glucoses and such, and it's very large, and you have to start the breakdown process early on. So the submandibular is thicker, more amylase right in there and such, and the sublingual is mostly mucus because you got to wet the food so that it can slide down. All right. It also, that fluid activates chloride ions, and you need that chloride from sodium chloride. You need that to activate the salivary amylase and all. So, how much do you secrete? On an average, about a liter. So you get nervous, it goes down. You're not so nervous, it goes up. Usually when you put food in the mouth, it will stimulate the parasympathetic, calm you down. So if you're sitting at home right now and you're worried to death, you're probably eating, and you shouldn't do that. So just thinking about food, smelling food will also make you salivate. So there you go. Now when you start doing that, you're a Pavlov dog. So, the other ones there, the tongue, skeletal muscle, covered with the mucous membrane. The frenulum, the lingual frenulum, attaches the tongue to the floor of the mouth and such. They're covered with these little finger-like extensions called papillae. Their taste glands and such are in there. They're kind of underneath and found on the tongue. They're found in different places and such. Then you also have glands in there to secrete that lipase. Usually when you eat fatty food, you smash it up against your hard palate, and that's how you're kind of pushing that lipase into the food. Your teeth, these are your dentes and such found in your gums and all of that. There is a ligament that holds your teeth in place. There you go. That's the periodontal ligament. The tooth has a crown. That's the part you see. It's part above the gum line. And then there's the root that's into the bone and such, and it's covered with this substance known as cementum. It holds it in place. And then the little bitty area between the gum and the bone is the neck. So you shouldn't really see the neck too much. The dentin is this layer of protein that's underneath the enamel, and it's also underneath the cementum and all of that. It's a kind of living connective tissue. So the enamel, which is on the outside, that is a secretion. It is one of the hardest substances known, and it lasts for a very long time. So